Hey there, this is Joyce Kettering from creativeandproductive.com. So I'm going to do a live session today. I'm trying to do one once a month. So this is the June version of the live Q&A. If you have any questions, just jump in and go into the live comments section. And if you don't, I'll just go through a bunch of questions that I've received via email. So one of the first questions I got was, are most libraries royalty free? So that's a difficult question to say, really, but so it was a bit just to put it in a little bit of context. It was a kind of a beginner asking the question. So I don't know that most libraries are royalty free. It depends on how you define royalty free. So if you define that by libraries who buy out your tracks so that afterwards you get no royalties, then no, I would not say that most libraries are royalty free. If you're talking about royalty free in this royalty free libraries, which is the most common term to describe libraries where the customer only needs to pay once for the license, then yes, there are lots of royalty-free libraries out there, and the difference, the reason they call themselves royalty-free, is to distinguish themselves from other options, which were like kind of providing needle drop licenses where the customer had to pay every time they were using the track, as opposed to kind of a one-time fee, where a customer who uses a royalty-free library just has to pay for that license once, and in that license there's usually an unlimited number of times they can use it, but only in certain types of projects. It depends on the library, but that's kind of the distinction between royalty-free buyout libraries, where they completely buy out your tracks, and needle drop libraries. But just to be clear, if you have your music in royalty-free libraries, that doesn't mean that you don't get paid any royalties afterwards, that you, the songwriter, don't get paid any royalties. In a royalty-free library, the royalty-free is for the customer, like they only pay once. They don't need to pay you royalties. However, when your track is used in a project, then it might go to a performance rights organization, and the performance rights organization still owes you songwriting royalties. You're not waiving those rights. All right, so the next question from that email was sending me 3 tracks and saying, even without listening to them, where are these sites that music supervisors use and are willing to drop $3,000 on to license a track? So that'll really depend on the music supervisor and the project they're working on. Not every music supervisor is going to buy a license for $3,000, and not every project is going to warrant that. Also, different music supervisors will use different different sources for their music. Some will use music libraries. Some will use publishers that they work with. So just try to keep in mind that music supervisors need to work fast, and they need to make sure that the music is cleared. So they'll have a tendency to work with a few trusted sources. And really, the best advice I can give you is to actually follow music supervisors you admire on Twitter, for example, and try to find out who these trusted sources are for them. It's usually not a great idea to actually send your track to a music supervisor directly, because unless you've done a lot of research and they're open to unsolicited submissions, and they work on this specific project where your track would just be perfect, then yeah, it might make sense. But most of the time, music supervisors are bombarded by music submissions that they don't want. So it's not a really good use of your time and energy. Okay, so next question from that email was, in your opinion, if you were to submit a track that is TV series theme song worthy, is going the royalty-free route something you personally would be happy with? Again, it depends on what you call royalty free. If you mean that someone is buying out your rights, you're selling your copyrights and renouncing performance royalties, then no, I would not go for that unless I really needed to make cash now, and I was fine with, you know, just selling my rights, which I'm usually not. But if you mean royalty free as opposed to needle drop, as I mentioned earlier, so if you mean royalty free for the customer in the sense that the customer only has to pay one time, then yeah, sure, why not? How much would you sell it for? Again, it depends so much on the project, the customer, and how much I value that particular track. So, it also, if I can sell that, if I think it's a track that I can sell to other people on other project. When I say sell, I mean license, but if the product I'm offering is custom audio, or if it's a non-exclusive track that I can also license elsewhere, then that's gonna all of that is gonna influence what price I ask for it. Also, of course, depending on the project. Like if I have a friend who's working on a project, on an indie project, and they ask me for music, and I know that their budget is small and they can't afford a lot, I might work for a lower fee. So not I wouldn't work for free if other people are getting paid, but for certain projects, you might want to make an exception. Um, so yeah, and just when I use a music library, I tend to go with their recommended pricing. Songtrader, you can open a free account with them and just have a look at their pricing tool. I found that useful, and a lot of my students have found that helpful because it shows you all different types of projects, audiovisual projects you can get on, and gives you an idea of the type of pricing that's market, the kind of going rate, market rate. All right, so that was an email. I like a bunch of questions I got about music libraries and royalty free and how to price your music. I also got a really cool question. Actually, I thought it was an important question from Eden this week, and I thought I'd share that question with you on here, and kind of share my feedback to Eden. So the question was like, can you give me an advice on how to overcome the fear of submitting the music, or your catalog to the music libraries or something similar like that? Thank you. So basically advice on overcoming the fear of putting yourself out there and submitting music. So I think it's a great question, because so much of what we do, or should I say, so much of what we don't do is because we're afraid. We'll procrastinate by spending hours, learning about how to play an instrument instead of actually practicing and, playing and improving and making mistakes. Or even learning about licensing. We will read blog posts and we'll watch YouTube videos about how to do stuff, but then something inside of us just kind of blocks us, I guess, just prevents us from taking the next step. So here are my thoughts on, if you're noticing that you're not submitting your music, it may be that you need to sort out a few admin stuff before you do it, but it might also be that you're a little bit afraid and you're kind of finding excuses not to do it because you're afraid. So if that's the case, if you think you might be, a little bit, have a bit of a case of fear of failure, here are my thoughts. Number one man's noise is another man's music, or woman's noise, another woman's music. So sometimes, even one man's noise when he's hungry, and that, is that same man's music after lunch. So really, when you submit music, it's true that you might get negative feedback, but that negative feedback in isolation doesn't really mean anything. Like, it's just one person's opinion. It might just be their opinion that day at that particular time. So the only way to get really valuable feedback is to get a really big sample size of feedback. So it's to submit, the more you submit music, the more feedback you get. Positive or negative, or even indifference is a sort of feedback. If nobody's reacting, then you're doing something wrong. Either you need to improve the music. It's possible. We always need to improve the music, really, and or in terms of how you're communicating. But it's only by submitting your music to a bunch of people that you can actually get that feedback. So it's important that that you do it. Anyway, the lesson here is don't read too much into isolated reactions and try not to take things personally, but aim for like a global reaction, getting enough reactions that you can actually kind of draw conclusions and improve. Another thought is like, you know, I really can't tell you the number of times my favorite tracks got rejected, while at the same time, some tunes that I didn't really think were that great got into, to certain music libraries. And the lesson there is, there's really no predicting what people like or don't like. And again, submitting the music is the only way of finding out what resonates with others. So there's no you can spend time trying to figure out what's going to work best and just assume that this and that is going to happen if you try this and that, but really you never know. So the best way to find out is to put it out there. Also, remembering that negative feedback is still feedback and indifference is information. So you know it might mean the music is not good enough, but it might also mean that you haven't sent it to the right people, or you haven't sent it in the right way that it reached them properly. Whatever that is, whatever the feedback is, you need to be submitting the music. It's information. Any type of feedback you get is information that you're going to be able to act on and improve. And it's about, it's about that learning the instrument. You don't learn the instrument by thinking about it and thinking, oh, what would be the best instrument, like the best guitar I could buy? And so would I prefer this chord progression or another chord progression? Or, you can only find out if you actually play those chord progressions and figure out, the ones you really love. All right. Final thought is, people like Lady Gaga, Meryl Streep, J.K. Rowling, Tim Ferriss, all these people were rejected many, many times before they became successful, as authors and musicians and actors. So I guess the lesson there is that experts don't know what they're doing half the time, and the other half, could be just bad timing. Maybe they know what they're doing, but it's just, they're in a hurry. They want to go to lunch, or something terrible just happened in their personal life, and they're just not, they're just can't do it right now, and they just kind of snap at you for no good reason, nothing that, but yeah, all you can do really is keep trying, keep working on the music and putting yourself out there, and just that continuous improvement type of mindset. And if you haven't seen it, there's a really great interview with Rebecca De La Torre on creativeandproductive.com. It's about how she went from, so she quit her office job. It was an engineering job. She was making six figures, and she quit that job because she wanted to play music only. And she quit that job for 36K a year job playing music. But 5 years later, she was making six figures again. And from that interview, she's just so relentless in her pursuit of learning and just trying stuff. I really recommend watching her talk. She's great and very real, very raw and real in the way she talks about things. Hey, Eden. So yeah, really, great interview to watch. And yeah, and actually, Eden, I'm going through that my answers to your question, because I thought this should be on video, because I'm sure a lot of other people have the same issue. I sure do still. So yeah, well, the way I'd like to conclude on that is that really all of this is kind of theory, and I guess it's stuff that you've already heard and you kind of know deep down, but there's still a part of you that that is struggling to put your music out there. So something that I do, and I don't do it all, I don't do it every day because it can drain energy. But when I notice that I've been procrastinating about doing something, first of all, I ask myself, why am I procrastinating? I try to figure out why I'm doing that. And it's usually because I'm afraid. I know a lot of people say that procrastination comes from the fact that we prefer like immediate reward to hard work. I don't think that, I mean, in my case anyway, I don't think that's necessarily true. I think it's mostly because I'm afraid that I'm going to work hard and still not succeed. Like, that's the worst fear ever. And I remember having that as a teenager. Like, it's cool. I was a pretty good student without working hard. And I was terrified that if I worked hard, my grades wouldn't really improve. And what would that mean? So anyway, back to the music. The way I move forward anyway when I'm afraid is I imagine myself in 2 years having made no progress. And it makes me feel like crap. And I just kind of try to feel that pain. I try to feel that pain of being 2 years later and not having made any progress with my music, or creative and productive, and the dreams I have around that, or in my personal life as well. I just kind of picture myself not having tried anything. And that's actually how I found the courage to leave my full-time job and go full-time, in music, do music licensing, and then teaching, and writing. It's because I was thinking, okay, if I don't do this, if I don't try, I'll just feel terrible. And actually, in that case, it was like in 7 years' time. I was picturing myself a little bit forward. So anyway, like, if you spend enough time like really thinking about how you'll feel, if you don't do something, like how crap that will make you feel. I think if you can really feel that pain, then the pain of doing it, like whether it requires effort and hard work or anything like that, then that pain will go away because it'll shrink in comparison to the pain of not doing anything. So yeah, those were my thoughts on overcoming fears. Eden, did you have another question you wanted to ask me? If not, I'll just I think I'll wrap it up and say until next time. I don't know if there's a delay on this, but all right, okay, cool. Awesome. So I'll wrap it up and talk to you soon. As usual, if there's anything I can help you with, you can reach out in the comments section, and I respond as soon as I can. All right. Talk to you soon. Bye.